Hello everyone, and welcome to the first part of my brand new series, Fallen Flag Collections. In this series, I'll be taking a look at my collections of various train-related items, starting with, of course, my N-scale fleet. I have very many engines here, from steam engines to diesels to Thomas & Friends to even static engines, and in this video, we're going to cover all of them. We'll start with the steam engines, then Generation 1 diesels, then modern diesels, then static engines, then Thomas engines. But with that, let's get started. We'll start off with my first steam engine and also most unreliable model. If you haven't figured it out yet, I put all the engines in this video in order of build date. So the earliest steam engine I have built, as well as the first one I got coincidentally, was this one. A very common starter steam engine model for N-scale people, this being the Bachmann USRA 060. This one is in the Santa Fe livery. And if you know me, you know that I started collecting N-scale engines a long time ago, back when I was still a massive Thomas fan, and I mean I still am, but I wanted to have my own fleet of engines, so I gave all the engines names. This guy here is named Brandon. His backstory is that he worked for Santa Fe as a trade-in from the Baltimore and Ohio, since Santa Fe never actually had USRA 060s. And eventually he was put in a park, and later the DLM went and got him. So pretty normal backstory for a preserved steam locomotive. You'll notice that as we go on and get to some of the models I acquired more recently, they tend to not have backstories, but Brandon here has a backstory, because he was one of the first models I got. He was my only steam engine for a long while, and I had many fun memories with him on the original DLM. Unfortunately, he started having reliability issues a few years back. I tried my best to fix him, but he's not completely perfect. I had to sever the connection to his tender electrically just to get him to run again, which means he does stick on points and faulty bits in the track a lot. Not to mention the lamp on top of his smoke box no longer works. It's an old Bachmann tooling with split chassis design, so I'm absolutely not, surprised by the fact that all of a sudden it's breaking for no reason. The model is also really cheaply produced, if I'm honest. The details are all molded, the livery is very basic, and it has this giant, awful, visible screw on the top of one of the domes. Not very good, but sentimentally one of my favorite models, since it was the first steam engine I got, and the main mascot, you could say, of the DLM for quite a while. The second steam engine is another Bachmann USRA 060. I got this guy way later, and he's actually the second most recent steam engine I got, and he came from the Bachmann Spirit of Christmas pack, hence the Christmas-themed livery. It is a little weird that even though he's the same engine type, he's not actually the same tooling as Brandon. His body is the same, but his chassis is actually different. If you look on this side versus this side, you can see that he actually has a different valve gear arrangement. I'm pretty sure that's actually accurate to the real USRA 060s, and the other one is inaccurate on Brandon, but either way, it's interesting. He also has a different tender. In canon, this isn't supposed to be like a separate engine on the DLM, it literally is just supposed to be Brandon repainted, and the idea is that every year for Christmas they dress him up like this for their Polar Express trains, and they swap out his tender because that back water area actually is a door with a baggage area with presents for kids in it, and it's like where you would have Santa on those like mall Santa type things. But yeah, just like Brandon, the model is not very good. It's extremely poorly painted, which is very, very visible on this model because it has a lot of different colors. The screw in the dome is even more egregiously visible. You can see on the front there that there's a big splotch of red showing through on the front of his running board. And I don't know, it's just not a very good model. But I wanted at least one Christmas engine to go around the Christmas tree, so I figured I might as well get a Christmas-themed model. Next up, we have Trixie, a Mini-Trix K4 from the 70s. I'm sure you can guess where her name comes from. Either way, I got this model at Dodge Dutchman Essenhaus train show in 2022. And it was an older model, as you can clearly tell, and I was fully aware that it was older, but it also meant that it was cheaper, and I don't know, these older models, especially the older N-scale ones, just have a certain charm to them. And being a PRR K4, a very iconic type of engine, it wasn't something I was going to pass up. This engine here is numbered 5495, which means it's specifically based on the very last batch of K4s built in 1928. The model, for its time, is very accurate, and even now, over 50 years later, it still runs really well on the DLM. I mean, it's a little bit difficult to start. I needed a lot of lubrication the first time I ran it just to get up and running, but she has an insanely high top speed. Not to mention being completely metal means that she can pull a lot. And for only $75, an extremely reliable steam engine and N scale, that's an absolute steal. The previous owner did make a couple mods to her, including brake pipes and new couplings on both the front and back, as well as swapping out the backlight for this weird gemstone thing that's supposed to look like a backlight. I don't know, I liked it, so I kept it. She's in the very basic Penzi livery, which is fine. It's technically accurate. This is the livery the K4s wore in the 40s, I think, during World War II, and I like the completely black appearance. It's not often that you get passenger engines in completely black, or steam engines really all that much, so it's a nice different livery design. Really the only pop of color is her bell here, which looks really great. Unfortunately, the one downside is that she does smell pretty bad after you run her for a while, but old model trains just tend to do that. I've tried lubricating the motor and, cleaning the wheels and that kind of stuff, but it still happens. Not really much you can do there. I really don't like her side rods, though. That's the one thing I have to say that I don't really like. The weird black bars in between the side rods, I know that was a pretty common thing to do with engines in the 70s, but man, I really don't like it. When the train's going fast, it almost makes it look like the side rods are invisible. One of these days, I'll get my hands on some nail polish remover, take those side rods off, and scrub that black until it's gone for more accurate silver side rods. And I know maybe it's supposed to be like weathering, but my engines are all supposed to be in a museum where they would be cleaned daily, so it doesn't really make sense timeline-wise. But overall, a really nice model that I'm absolutely happy to have in my collection, and one of the ones I run the most frequently. Next up, we have my one and only mainline freight steam engine, Steven. A Great Northern-owned USRA 282 Light Mikado, number 3203, which was a real model that existed in real life. Now, this engine, I believe, is Kato, but don't quote me on that. Again, he's a second-hand item purchased at Dutchman Essenhaus in 2023. Because of that, he's not an authentic original condition engine from Kato, as you can probably tell by the years of dirt and grime built up on him from years of sitting in storage. The previous owner, I believe, modded him from the standard Kato Great Northern Mikado, which if I can find a picture, I'll pop that up on screen right about now. But basically, the modifications are the previous owner painted his roof red, he swapped out the safety valves, removed the whistle, and painted his smokebox gray when the cab roof and smokebox are black on the original model, which is technically accurate to the real-life Great Northern USRA 2882s. At least I think it is, because there's only black and white photos of them as far as I could find. But I like this version a lot better, and again, for a polished museum engine, having more splashes of color like that makes a lot more sense and looks way better. The one downside with him being a second-hand model, though, is how dirty he is, and I still haven't finished fully cleaning him off. I've tried many times, but trust me, that dust is caked on there. He was the star of my favorite On the DLM episode, which is called Steven on the DLM, of course. If you haven't seen that one, it's my favorite one. You should definitely watch it. The On the DLM series is a series that didn't really gain that much traction when I really was hoping it would, so if you could check out that video, that would be great. And that whole series in general for more N-scale content. But either way, I really like the customizations the previous owner did to this model. And being a Kato model that's relatively new, he runs extremely well, and he's the smoothest running steam engine in my collection. Not very powerful, unfortunately, due to his light weight, but yeah. Also, apparently, he doesn't have a DCC socket fitted. I don't really plan to DCC fit my engines, but if I do, this guy's going to be a nightmare. So, yeah, if you're planning to DCC fit any of your models, don't buy a USRA 282 from Kato. But that aside, he's a very awesome model and can pull a decent amount of cars. Not really much to say about him, though, despite being my most frequently run engine, I think. And next up, we have my most prized model and only steam engine in the entire collection, that Streamlined. Minneapolis and St. Louis 462 number 502, aka Silva. She's also my most powerful model, able to pull literally every single piece of rolling stock I have at the same time, thanks to the fact that she has a toxic combination of traction tires and a full metal body. I purchased her at Jerry's Trains in Mishawaka for only $100, and man, for that price, this engine is an absolute steal. Again, it's an older model, and again, it's not 100% accurate because Minneapolis and St. Louis's Streamline Pacifics were their own design, not the sort of stock design as seen here. Because this is really just a USRA 262 with the Minneapolis and St. Louis streamlining slapped on top. That's why the front part, when it comes back around, you can see that the front streamlining isn't exactly fully connected because it's not really supposed to be there. But either way, this is still a very cool model. The Minneapolis and St. Louis Streamline Pacifics don't really have that much information on them, and they look similar enough to USRA 262s that it doesn't really bother me. Either way, the model itself is really good. The paintwork is nice, the Minneapolis and St. Louis text is applied very well, and that white streak definitely gives it an awesome pop of color that most other steam engine models don't have. I really like this engine. Unfortunately, it does have a couple mechanical issues, namely the fact that every time she goes around a curve, she'll sometimes cut out. I'm not sure if that's just because the curves on my layout are too tight or if the screws in her base are too tight and whatnot. I've tried loosening the screws, which does help, but then I had the base keeper plate fall out while running her, and I don't want that to happen again. So I had to tighten the screws back up, and so the issues came back. If anyone knows what that is or how to fix it, please tell me. But yeah, I don't actually know what manufacturer made her, as I bought her secondhand, but she was in box, and I think I had the box lying around here somewhere, but I couldn't find it before filming this video, so that's why. But again, another one of my extremely frequently run models. You might have seen my YouTube short of her pulling an absolutely massive consist, which just goes to prove that, boy oh boy, she's powerful. And is also extremely helpful pulling really heavy things like the track cleaner car, which has a lot of resistance. It helps. Unfortunately, she does have to have her wheels cleaned a lot. I don't know, she just picks up dust faster than the other engines. I don't know if that's just the fact that I run her more often or what. But also, the other problem is, again, just like Trixie, she can smell pretty bad after running for a while. But those are really the only complaints. Otherwise, a very reliable model. Next up, we have my pair of Norfolk Southern Officer Car Special F9As. Now, these are exactly the same model. It's not like one's 4270 and one's 4271. No, they are the same. These two came from the Bachmann Thoroughbred train sets, which I have 2 of, thus meaning I have 2 of these engines and 2 of all the rolling stock that came in the pack. This one here, without the horns, is named Southern, and the other one is Norfolk. See the naming convention? Yeah, Norfolk Southern. But either way, Southern is in canon 4271, but of course the model doesn't show that. I'll fix that one day. Either way, the headcanon for these is after Norfolk Southern retired their F units, they sold them to the DLM instead of where they actually ended up, on the Aberdeen, Carolina, and Western, and the Blue Mountain and Reading, as they did in real life. Either way, these two actually as models have quite a bit of an interesting history, because 4271, aka Southern here, was actually my first N-scale model. I went to Hobby Lobby in search for HO models, because if you don't know, I started out as an HO modeler and switched to N later. Southern was my first N-scale model, because when I arrived at Hobby Lobby, I wanted to buy an HO engine, and I had a bunch of money saved up for it, but they didn't have any HO scale engines. But they did have N-scale, and I thought it would be cool to get him as a sort of, narrow gauge, in quotations, model for my standard gauge HO scale stuff. Turns out he was way more reliable and way more fun to mess around with because he was a small model. And as you can see, the N-scale collection has continued to grow ever since and is now my main and only functioning model railway. The second engine, Norfolk, I got for Christmas that same year because I accidentally put the same train set on my Christmas list. Oof. But at the very least, it does mean I have a matched set of Norfolk Southern F units. As far as the model's construction, yeah, it sucks. The Bachmann F units are Bachmann F units. They're cheap train set locos. They aren't supposed to look good, but they do run pretty well. The funniest part is the 2 ditch lights on the front of each of them, which aren't on the tooling of the Bachmann F unit, so they had to, make them weirdly in there. And every time I look at them, I just want to cry. But either way, besides that, the models are pretty competently painted, and as long as you're not looking at them right up close, they don't look wrong at all, unless you notice that Southern doesn't have his horns, which fell off because my brother knocked him off the table, I think. Either way, they're both fine models. Not really much to comment on, they're just fine, and I'm glad I have a duo of them. Next up, we have a Santa Fe F unit, also from Bachmann. It wouldn't be an American train collection without a Santa Fe F unit. That's just a rule of model railroading. This unit uses the same tooling as the other two and is thus an absolute piece of garbage model, but it runs really well, and the best part is since it has the same chassis as the other two, as well as my GP40, that means that they can run all together in one massive consist, and they run at the exact same speed even on DC control, which is really cool. Either way, this engine here is named Chief, and I'm sure you can see where the name comes from. In canon, he's actually not a Santa Fe F unit. He's Santa Fe 49 from the Canadian Railway Museum, which is actually a Canadian National F unit in real life. But he is still an F7, so I'm personally okay with that being his backstory. I don't want to change any real-life history with having another Santa Fe F unit preserved and not rebuilt into a CF7. Either way, there's not really much to say about this model, like a lot of these more basic models in my collection. His name's Chief, he's a Santa Fe War Bonnet F unit, and I don't run him that often. And now, with a massive glow-up from those crappy Bachmann engines, we have Cato's Milwaukee Road F7A, otherwise known as 90A, which is the number of this engine. She's named Amber in my canon, and is the only model I never run because her back coupling is broken. My brother dropped him off the table, again, and because of that her back coupling's broken, so I can't run her. And because it's Cato, replacing the back coupling is an absolute nightmare, and you can't do it without drilling. So I'm going to have to get someone else to do it because I do not have the confidence or skill required to do that. Which is kind of upsetting because this is by far my best looking F unit model. Being an FP7A, of course, she's a lot longer and has a representation of the steam generator on the top, which is pretty cool. Either way, the livery is perfectly applied with the Milwaukee Road on the side right there. Looks great. A nice orange and darker orange color combination. She's the most detailed model out of any of them, even with separately molded rivets on the roof and an actual functioning Mars light. Sadly, it only works on DCC, but man, that would be cool if it worked on DC. Either way, she's just a really, really fun model, and I wish I had the Milwaukee Road coaches to go with her. However, when I purchased her, she wasn't alone, because coming with her was a Milwaukee Road B unit, also being an FP7A. Exact same livery as Amber, just it's a B unit. I really like having a B unit in N scale. It's really fun to run it with the other F units and E units in my collection. It's just a really fun model to have, and I'm honestly more happy about having this than the A unit Amber, which is pretty funny. Of course, being a B unit, it's not alive in my DLM canon or anything. It's just a B unit that Amber uses to get extra power. Again, I really like this model, and it has a very nice detail as well as the steam generator representation and even actual glass windows on the side. Cato is just amazing, and with how cheap these models are, I think it was $125 for both this and Amber. It was an absolute steal. And I really do want to get more B units in the future, but they don't really come up that often because, well, they just don't sell very well. Maybe I'll get one at Essen House next year, who knows. But for now, this is a model I'm very happy to have, and is honestly my most reliable diesel in the entire roster, as well as the fastest. Somehow it's faster than the A unit. How that makes any sense, I have no idea. Another Cato-covered wagon is next, this being a Union Pacific E unit number 947, aka Gavin. He's an E9, as is clearly stated by this cool plaque on his side, which sadly is only printed and not 3D, but hey. The rest of this model is absolutely perfect. The detailing is spot on, the UP wings on the nose look amazing, and even the back is detailed, which is a detail I've never seen on any other N-scale model. He looks really good, but he's also just another model I don't have that much to say about, unfortunately. I don't like yellow. I actually really don't like yellow, especially the shade that UP uses, so I never really run this guy. I got him as a birthday present, so I didn't intentionally choose to buy him. But I guess it's nice to have at least some Union Pacific representation in my collection, and it's from the good era of Union Pacific. One of these days, I will get my hands on an N-scale Challenger, but that day is not today. He's also the only E unit I own, which is pretty cool. And again, buying him off Amazon for only $80 was again an absolute steal for a model that's this reliable and looks this good. I swear, Cato is just the best model manufacturer. They're way better than literally every other one. Next, we have an Erie Lackawanna Alco PA1 number 859. A very nice, very chunky, and extremely heavy model. Like a lot of others, he was purchased at Dodge Dutchman Essenhaus in 2024. The model is pretty basic, as I think it's an older one, but even for being an older model, the running on this thing is absolutely perfect. It's one of the smoothest models in my collection. The detailing isn't great, the paint is looking a little weathered and dirty on the front of the nose, but in terms of operation, this thing is perfect. It's a literal brick, and I like the more brick-type models like this that are cheaper, not only because they're cheaper, but also because I don't have to stress to no end every time I pick it up, worrying that I'm going to break a tiny detail, which I have done before, foreshadowing. Either way, it's just a pretty basic model again. But it's nice to have an Alco PA in my collection. They're a model I've always loved, and my favorite livery for them has always been the Erie Lackawanna. This livery is genuinely one of my favorite liveries of all time. I have no idea how they managed to make brown, yellow, and gray, the three most ugly colors, into an attractive design, but they did. Massive props to Lackawanna for coming up with that one. And next we have another Alco. Not sure on the manufacturer for this thing, I think it's either Kato or Atlas, but as you can clearly see, this is an Amtrak RS3. I saw this thing at Essenhaus, and I had to buy it. Amtrak switchers are just something that's so weird. You barely see pictures of them, you barely see people talking about them, but yet finding a model of one is insanely rare, and that's because none were ever produced past the Minitrix era in the 70s. This is actually a custom model. I don't know who the original maker was, but they customized, I believe, a Penzi one into this, and holy moly, it looks beautiful. They even gave it the accurate number 106. The only Alco RS3 to wear Amtrak Phase 3 like this in an unrebuilt state was 106. So massive props to them for painting the model as 106. I just think it's such a novelty to have an Amtrak switcher, as I said. They're so rare and very rarely discussed. Not to mention the fact Amtrak had RS3s is just really forgotten about by the general rail fan community unless you lived in Chicago in the 70s. Not to mention the fact that this thing has an actual chrome finish on it. Sadly, the running isn't the greatest, but personally I just like to plonk this model on the turntable or somewhere in the yard to make it look like it's switching. You don't see these types of diesels running too often at railroad museums unless it's like a rural one where they only have switchers, but so it makes sense for the engine just to be lounging around in the yards. But again, it's just a really cool model, but sadly doesn't run too well. Next up, we have yet another Essenhaus bargain, a Baltimore, Ohio Pinstripe SD7. Honestly, I think this is the model in the entire collection that I have the least to say about. It's just a B&O SD7. I really wanted a chassis system one because chassis livery just pops so much, and these were really cheap at Essenhaus, but sadly both of the chassis models they had for sale didn't work. And they had another one, I'm not exactly sure what livery it was in, I think it was like Seaboard Coastline or something, and I would have bought that one, but it didn't have handrails. The only functioning one I could get was a Baltimore, Ohio one. But considering how cheap they were, I went ahead and bought it. This engine is named Mason in the DLM lore, and he's one of the more common engines to see in canon. But of course, in real life, I barely run him since he's just the most boring engine. I think right after Essenhaus, I've only run this guy like once or twice, and they were really only to move cars in the background of other shots, not really the highlight of any of the trips. Maybe I should run this guy more often, who knows, but he's pretty much the least known, most back-seated bench warmer model I have. Next up, we have the final Alco in the collection, a LS&I RSD15 Crocodile number 2405. This guy is named Arnold in the DLM lore and is again another custom model. I believe he was in the LS&I livery from production, but as you can see by the paper number boards on his front and back, the original owner tried to change the number and didn't do a very good job. I just really like the RSD15, so when I saw this thing for sale, I had to buy it regardless of how old and faulty it was. As you can see, one of the entire handrails is missing. One of these days I'll get around to restoring this guy, but again, today is not the day. He just kind of sits around and lounges pretty much in the train storage box. One of these days, as maybe a winter project or a rainy day, I'll come down here and fix this guy up. But for now, he's living out basically storage line, deadline status, as far as my model trains are concerned. One of these days, Arnold will have his chance to shine, but we'll just have to see how long that takes. Now we move on to second generation diesels, starting with an Alaska Railroad GP40-2. Now, if you know your railroad history, you know that Alaska Railroad 3018 here is a GP40, not a 40-2. This unit came in another Bachmann train set, so it's a cheap train set loco, and thus, even though the number relates to a GP40, the model is still a -2. Dumb. Either way, it's a decent model. It's fun to run around the DLM, the Bachmann couplings hook easily, making this engine the best in my entire collection for switching, and I'll often use him to move around cars in the yard. His name's Tui, which is an Alaskan name, but as far as model construction goes, he's not great. The biggest fault is this giant splodge of yellow right there where it's supposed to be black. I don't really care because it honestly kind of looks like weathering, but either way, it's just a pretty cheaply produced model. The coaches that came in this pack were really cool, and that's why I wanted it, not really the engine. But I'm still glad to have him as a utility engine of sorts. Next up, we have the only SD40 series loco in my collection, which I will be changing one of these days, Carl, which is a Santa Fe SD40-2. I used to think this model was a Katy paper unit because of the MKM on the side, but that's actually from Morris Knudsen. And again, if you know your railroad history, you know that Union Pacific bought Katy, not Santa Fe. So yeah. This model is a Kato unit, and actually one of the first Kato units, actually I think the first one that I ever got from them. And it really made me realize that Kato is just superior to every other manufacturer in every other way. Obviously now I don't think this model is perfect. I'm sure you've already noticed the extremely off-colored horn there on the top, and the fact that this guy is pretty dirty. As like a lot of the other older engines I have in my collection, I don't really run him that often. Either way though, he's still a really well-detailed blue bonnet. There's a lot of very small details in him that really make him look very realistic up close. He's probably the most realistic of all the models in my collection. I really like this guy, but because of his low speed in comparison to all the other diesels, I can't really run him in multiple unit consists, sadly. So he usually just sits on the sidelines or does switching work while the other engines get the time to shine. Maybe I will get another Santa Fe SD40 or one from another railroad from Kato, so this guy can have a pair to work with on freight trains and such. But for now, he's another model that I don't run too frequently. Another blue and yellow Santa Fe engine is up next, a U30C named Levi, also from Kato. This guy was actually named after one of my 8th grade classmates of all things. I'm not in contact with the Levi this guy is named after anymore, but we had some good times in 8th grade, so he got a train named after him. This guy, of course, is a U30C in the old Santa Fe pinstripe scheme, which is not the greatest Santa Fe scheme ever. Honestly, I would have preferred a U30C in blue bonnet, but again, I got him as a Christmas present, so I didn't really have the, foresight of actually knowing what model I was getting. But he's a pretty decent model, all things considered. Again, it's a model I don't run too often because 1, I've had him for a long time, and 2, I use him a lot, or at least I used to use him a lot, because of the couplings he has. This is an older Kato model, and thus it has the older core style couplings, or the thicker couplings, or the British couplings. There's many names for them. Either way, this style of coupling means that he's incompatible with a lot of my rolling stock without a transfer car, and it means he can't lash up to other diesels that have the other coupling system. Even though there are many engines in my collection he would run with perfectly fine since they run the same speed, I can't lash them up together because of the couplings, which is just really sad. And because of those two factors, just like Carl and Tui, he's a model that I don't run too frequently. Next up is, funnily enough, another Santa Fe U30C. But as you can see, this one looks totally different, because this is the U30CG passenger variant. And like all of Santa Fe's other passenger engines, it's painted brightly in the red and silver war bonnet colors. This is a Minitrix model, and his name is Giovanni. He actually used to run really well, but unfortunately, he is dead. His model burned out. The motor is completely fried, and this guy barely runs anymore. Apparently, these U30C models from Minitrix, especially in war bonnet, are pretty rare nowadays. So I'm kind of upset that I got this guy during the era when I didn't really know how to maintenance my models correctly, because maybe he could have survived until now if I did know how to do that back then. Either way, he is still dead, and I'm currently looking for another loco that's similar to him that I can steal the chassis, or probably just the motor, from so I can get this guy running again. But for now, he just sits in the train storage box. A model that I would absolutely love to run more often, but unfortunately I can't. I have also made one modification to him since I got him, which I don't know if you've noticed, but it's the fact that his back handrails are missing. I broke them off intentionally because they kept getting caught on things and I didn't like the way they look. If you see the front handrails, they're very much the wrong color and not applied correctly. Not to mention how chunky and bad looking they are. But hey, it was 1970s injection molding. That was the best they could do. And the back handrails really messed with the look and interfered with the rolling stock. So I removed them. Still not sure if that was the best choice, but one of these days I like to get more accurate handrails, not only for the back, but also for the front. But again, just like Arnold, it's another model that's going to need a major restoration before it can run again. Not only visually, but also mechanically. Next up, we have, would you look at that, another Santa Fe cowl unit. But as you can see, this one is extremely different livery-wise. This is an F-45 named George from, I think, Atlas? I could be wrong on that. I kind of forgot what this model came from, but holy, he was expensive. Is the most money I spent on any models in my collection. $220 just for this guy. However, there is a few good reasons for that. Number one, look at the livery application. It's absolutely peak. This guy is, of course, wearing the Kodachrome livery from the failed SPSF merger in 1986. Few SDP-40Fs got this scheme in real life, and this is one of them, 5991. Which is in a very faithfully recreated Kodachrome livery with very many small details painted or separately fitted. It looks absolutely beautiful. The F-45s are just a really nice and visually appealing engine, so I'm glad to have one in my collection. And out of all the liveries they came in, I had to go with Kodachrome. I absolutely love this scheme. But the best part with George here is that he has sound. The only model I know of ever that runs on DC, not DCC, and has sound. I'm going to real quick take him over the layout for a quick demonstration. For a model that only runs on DC and isn't DCC fitted, that sound system is incredibly impressive. Sadly, it doesn't have features like horns and stuff that you would get with DCC sound, but I didn't even know DC sound existed before I bought this guy. I had no idea he would have sounds, so it was quite a shock when I fired this thing up again at my Christmas party. Either way, this is a pretty decent model, but it does have one glaring issue, and that's the fuel tank. The fuel tank is made out of metal, as is most of this engine. However, when I got it out of the package, it wasn't attached. It was just laying loose in the package. It's actually connected with a piece of masking tape, and I can show you because I can literally pull off the fuel tank right now. Or not. Oh, actually, I think I glued it on later. But you can see there's a little metal block down there, which is pretty badly visible. But yeah, this fuel tank part wasn't attached to that metal block out of the box. I had to hot glue it on there, which is pretty disappointing for a $220 model. Strangely enough, I don't run this guy very often. I don't know why. He's honestly my favorite one to run because of the sound system. If I ever go back to running the DLM regularly, I think this guy should become a very frequent resident. Next up, we have another Essen House bargain, Johnson the CSX Stealth Scheme SD60. Stealth Scheme is one of the best CSX schemes ever, second only to YN2. Change my mind. But because that's such an unpopular opinion, finding engines in this scheme sucks. Especially in N scale, which is a relatively obscure scale compared to like O or HO, it's so hard to find models in Stealth Scheme. I don't even know if this is a stock model from Atlas, but I do know that that was what the manufacturer originally was. Whether it's been repainted or not, I can't tell since it's a secondhand model, but I'm pretty sure Stealth Scheme was in Atlas's catalog, but I don't know if 8700 was a number offered. And I think it might not have been since the number boards do appear to be tampered with and filled in with paper. Either way, though, this is a pretty fun model. It runs really well with Carl. It's like the only model that has a similar speed, and with the two both being standard cab EMDs, it's fun to lash them up together. It's just really nice to have such an obscure and weird model on my layout. It's just one that, when I saw it at Essen House, I just had to buy it. It's one of those things where it's so obscure and random that having one is just such a novelty. Sort of like the Amtrak RS3. It's just cool. And I suppose that sentiment could also be said about the next model. That next model being another Atlas SD60. But as you can see, this one's an SD60M. As I'm sure you've noticed from this spinning around and it sitting in the background this whole video, this is BNSF 9297, the Great Pumpkin. The first engine ever painted in the BNSF orange scheme, and the second engine ever to be painted in a BNSF-made livery, second only to the Vomit Bonnet. This unit isn't even actually in a livery. It's in two liveries. Look closely at the front or back and you'll see it's wearing two different colors, one on the left and one on the right. Eventually, the one on this side was chosen as BNSF H1, although with a few differences. Being a double weird two-face engine like this, being a super obscure engine and being tracked on heritage units, the one of only 3 engines I have that are currently tracked on the app, it's really cool to have this guy. Or I should say, was formerly tracked because it got scrapped. The real-life Great Pumpkin was scrapped just this year, and I'm really upset about that. I was really hoping to get a shot of the real-life Great Pumpkin passing this guy. But it's nice to have such a novelty model living on in N-scale form. I just really wish he had the modern coupling style so I could lash him up with Johnson and have the two SD60s run together. This guy's name is Charlie, which is a reference to Charlie Brown and the Great Pumpkin, or whatever that Halloween special was called, because of course his name's Charlie. I loved that as a kid, and I had to name a model after it, so that's why. Plus he's the Great Pumpkin, so it just makes sense. Either way, he's just a really fun novelty item that is just so interesting to have. And apparently he's also rare. Atlas Great Pumpkins don't come up very often, and they're usually pretty expensive, so very nice model, and I'm extremely glad I have it. Next up, we have Benson, or Benny for short, who's an Amtrak P42DC number 169. I have 2 P42DCs, one of 3 models that I have different variants of, although, these two are a lot more different than these two, or these two. The other ones are just livery differences. Either way, Benny here is in the standard Amtrak Phase 5B livery that was applied to all P40DCs built after 2000. He was, I think, built before that, but has been repainted, and I think is still around in this livery, but don't quote me on that. This model is also one of the fastest in my collection, tied with Hornet, the next P42DC I have. Don't really have too much to say about this guy, though. He's an Amtrak P40DC, he is cool, and I like him, and I run him quite frequently, but usually as a second engine with Hornet in the lead, because having a Heritage unit leader is just cooler than having a regular Phase 5 unit. I really wish Kato would make a Phase 7 P42, and they have, but it just hasn't been released to Amazon yet. Most of these models are either from Amazon or Essen House, and this model is from Amazon. Either way, pretty cool model, but again, I mostly just use it as a helper engine for Hornet. There is one funny story with this thing, though. One of my mom's friends went on the Amtrak Southwest Chief to California on a vacation, and she sent me pictures of the train, because, she knew I liked trains, and the loco that was leading was 169, and I was like, well, I haven't seen that train before, but I have an N-scale model of it. And she thought it was really funny. So that's the fun story with this guy. Maybe I should run this guy in the lead more often, but for now, he's pretty much taking a backseat to Hornet. And here's that aforementioned Hornet. Amtrak 203, the Operation Lifesaver Special Unit. I'm sure you can see why we named him Hornet just based on his paint scheme alone. Operation Lifesaver is a really interesting organization, and my brother absolutely loves it because of the Operation Lifesaver, no way meme that was circulating a few years back, if you remember that. He actually bought me this model. He spent $100 of his own money to buy me this model just so he could say, Operation Lifesaver, no way, at our Christmas party. And I'm glad he did because it's a very well detailed and fun model to run. Being the only Heritage unit I have for Amtrak, he's also the fastest Heritage unit in my collection. Very quick. And he's really fun to run trains with because he has a low center of gravity, so you can run him at Mach speeds around curves and S-bends, and he still won't derail. Does it look insane? Yes. Is it unrealistic? Yes. Is it awesome? Also yes. This is also an issue with Benny, but for both of the P-42s, the windows aren't fitted from the factory. You have to put them in yourself, and that's why they stick out a little bit, because I couldn't get them to go all the way in. Either way, it's a very nicely painted and well-running model, but again, like on a lot of the other diesels in my collection, I don't really have too much to say about him. And next up, we have my most recent Essen House buy, Halton, the BC Rails C40-8M, number 4619. If you don't know why the Halton name comes from, you may be thinking that's pretty weird, but it's actually named after the YouTuber Cowl Unit Productions, who uses the name Halton as his nickname, which is named after the CN Halton subdivision, which I'm assuming this is where this guy got his name from in canon. Either way, being a BC Rail Cowl unit, when I saw this thing at Essen House, I had to buy it. Come on, look how beautiful this thing is. It is amazing. It runs awesome. The lights are super cool. It's so well detailed, and it's honestly the best value for a model I've ever gotten. Every little vent and rivet and everything, even the draper taper, is modeled perfectly on this unit. There's literally not even a single problem with it. This is my only model from Rapido, who are known to produce relatively cheap models at insanely high quality, and this guy's no exception. I didn't even know Rapido did N-scale or USA stuff, but here we are, or I guess Canadian I should say. But this engine is just so nice, one of my most frequently run diesels, and I often don't even put him back in the storage box and just leave him on the layout for the next running session. That's how frequently I use him. He can pull passenger trains nice because of his cowl unit design. He can pull freight because, well, he's a freight engine. He looks really awesome. The only complaints I have, there are two of them. One, the brake pipes. The brake pipes stuck out so much that they got stuck on the points, and I had to literally clip them off with nail clippers because there was no other way to remove them. And the other complaint, the rock lights don't work. The top two regular ditch lights don't turn on, only the bottom two rock lights do, which means that they don't really have the rock light appeal of having 5 different headlights. But either way, it's still a pretty cool model, and I'm pretty sure with DCC and a little bit of modding, you can add those 2 bottom lights back in, but I won't be doing that because I don't want to ruin such an awesome model. And another thing I really appreciate about this model, they actually painted the horn instead of just having it be plastic, so the color matches. Unfortunately, I bent it. Oof. But that's not the model's fault, that's my fault. But again, a model that I really love to run, and probably my most frequently run diesel. Absolutely love this guy. Next up, we have another recent Essen House buy, Cole the CSX SD70 Mac number 713. His name is Cole, actually named by my brother, and I came up with that because it's hilarious. It has a double meaning. Not only is Cole, C-O-L-E, a pretty common name, but also Cole, C-O-A-L, is what this guy probably pulled on CSX, given the fact that he's an SD70 Mac. And of course, he's wearing CSX's absolutely legendary YN2, the only livery out there that can trump Cell Scheme, in my opinion, as far as CSX liveries. He looks beautiful, and I'm so sad there's no Macs left wearing the scheme, because they wear it the best of any engine. That hockey stick cab really sticks out on the Macs, and the gray long hood looks so nice, especially with the nice pop of color on the back. This is one of the earlier YN2s with the smaller text on the front, but yeah, it still looks really nice. I'm pretty sure this unit was scrapped in real life, so just like the Great Pumpkin, it's nice to have a visual representation of it in N-scale. Unfortunately, he is just a model I don't run too often. Again, because his speed doesn't really match any of the other engines. I do run it with Johnson sometimes, their speeds match up okay, but again, a model that I probably should run more often, but was pretty overshadowed by Halton when I got him at the 2025 Essen House show. We're getting into relatively modern engines now. Our first model whose basis was built in the 21st century, that being UP 1982, which is an ace, in the Missouri Pacific Heritage livery by Cato. This is another very awesome model. I got this unit and the Southern Pacific unit, which I'll be showing next, at the same time, and I was absolutely blown away by these. These were the second models from Cato I got after Carl,
And these models have a lot more intricate detail on them than Carl did. And I'm kid you not, my jaw dropped when I removed this guy from the bubble blister inside the Kato packaging for the first time. All the details are so good. It has directional lighting, like the air conditioning is put in separately. All these little details are applied so well. The one detail that isn't that great is the horn because it's a slightly different color, but at least it's not bent or misshapen or painted over to where you can't see the detail. It looks great. Every tiny little thing, even that tiny Union Pacific Building America, or even the tiny Missouri Pacific logo, or even the tiny ACE lettering, and even those tiny danger signs that you can barely see are legible. Kato did so well with this model, and it's not even that expensive. I mean, it's still pretty expensive, but not that expensive. It was a lot cheaper when I bought it back in 2021, but it's just a really nice model. This engine here, Lewis, and his sister Lucy, are the two most frequently run modern engines in my collection. They're just so reliable, very powerful, and look good pulling literally anything. So nice. This guy has a bit of a crazy canon in the actual DLM lore because, of course, why would a museum have a modern locomotive, let alone a heritage unit? And the actual reason is because he's, like, still owned by UP, but they lease him to the DLM for special events and things. And also, my brother made this crazy story with him that is apparently canon, that his driver's like an alien or something. It's weird. But a very fun model and extremely well detailed that I hope to do more with in the future. And that also goes for his sister Lucy, who we'll be getting to next. And here she is, Lucy. Pretty much everything I had to say about 1982 applies for 1996 as well. However, this model is substantially more complicated in the livery department, replicating the daylight scheme, and they did it really well, so I tend to run her more often than Lewis just because I think the livery looks better. Union Pacific's heritage units just all look really good, even though they're more of tribute units, I guess, because the schemes aren't replicated 100% perfectly. They all look really good, and I cannot believe they're turning 20 years old this year. Jeez. Either way, the printing on this model's a little worse. You can't really read the UP shields or the danger signs, and I don't know why they changed the run of the same model for different detailing. Maybe they were produced at different times. Who knows? But pretty much everything I had to say about Lucas still applies to her, so not much to say. And next, we have a Gevo. A CN Gevo, but still a Gevo. I bet you're wondering, Fallen Flag fan, you hate Gevos. Why would you buy a model of one? Because it's awesome. I think Gevos actually look really good. I only don't like them because of how common they are. And having a tiny version of a model I see all the time is really cool. If Norfolk Southern C6Ms existed in N-scale, you bet your butt I'd have an entire fleet of them. But they don't. At least, not yet. Kato, please. Either way, the CN Gevo here, number 2899, aka Sophia, looks really good. She's also named after one of my school friends, and just like Levi, I don't really keep in contact with her anymore, but if you're watching this video, Sophia, I named a train after you. Cool. Anyways, not really much to say, though. She runs really well with the other two Kato aces that I have in my collection, even though she's not an ace. The motors are, I think, the same, so they match up really well. But again, like a lot of the diesels in my collection, I feel like I'm saying this too much, I don't really have too much to say about her. And with that, that's all the diesels, the biggest section of my collection. Now let's move on to the only two electric engines I own. And starting off the electric section, we have undoubtedly the crappiest model in my collection. Another cheap Bachmann engine, this one being a New Orleans Desire Street trolley. I bought this guy on Amazon for 51 bucks. And for a price like that, I don't know what I was expecting, but he looks awful. The detail is okay, but the molding sucks. These are flimsy and bad. And just look at the passengers. Ugh. I will be opening this guy up one of those days and coloring in those windows black with Sharpie because it would genuinely look better than whatever that abomination is. Either way, this guy's named Kyle in the DLM lore, and he runs as an interurban service, usually on the middle loop of the DLM, just basically giving short rides to tourists as a trolley. Does it make sense since the DLM isn't technically electrified? No, but it looks cool, so whatever, who cares? I don't know if you noticed this when I renovated the DLM. I had to get rid of those short 3D printed white tunnels because those couldn't clear it. Oof. But yeah, a crappy model that I absolutely hate, don't know why I bought, but it was a decent bargain, and with a little bit of sprucing up, it could look pretty good. But yeah, this is also the only one of these models that I have a review on in my collection, which basically states my opinions on it in more detail. It's mid. Moving on to the exact opposite of that, though, we have my next electric locomotive, Gabe the Penn Central GG1. This is honestly my favorite model in the entire collection. I love this thing. And it was one of the first models I got, too. It ran on the N-scale layouts before the DLM was even a thing. This model is just so fun. Now, please don't execute me from YouTube for saying this, but Penn Central is the best livery for GG1s. They look so good in black. What can I say? Not to mention all the intricately modeled rotating bogies make this model really fun to run, although an absolute pain in the butt to put on the track. This model is from Bachmann, and it really does show that when Bachmann's giving a mostly flat, not too detailed model to replicate, they can do it really well. I love the GG1s in real life, and I love this model. This is one of the few models in the collection, and actually I think the only one, that has met his real-life basis. 4822, currently still in its Penn Central livery, is preserved at the National New York Central Railroad Museum in Elkhart, Indiana, and I've been there twice, and the first time I got pictures of this guy next to the real 4822, which I'll put on screen right now if I can find them. My camera roll's a mess, don't judge me. Either way, this is one of the most frequently run models on the DLM 1 and 2, and is still a model I run semi-frequently, but has kind of been overshadowed by the newer models, since I just like to run models that I haven't run in quite a while. Either way, this guy's really cool and was my second most powerful engine behind Silva. Very awesome. Love this model. It's just so good. GG1s look so good in black. Not to mention, the absolute coolest feature any of my models have is on this guy, the pantographs. The pantographs actually can go up. It takes a little bit of finessing, but look at that. The problem is getting them back down. They don't like to clip. This is my one problem with the model. Now watch in real time as I struggle to get the pantographs back on. But either way, a model I really like. And now we move on to my selection of Bachmann-Thomas N-scale models. As pretty much everyone who watches my channel knows, I'm a massive Thomas fan, and of course I had the Bachmann N-scale Thomas line. This is genuinely the best model train line of Thomas engines out there. It's way better than Bachmann's HO line, and all of them are actually based on the same era of the show. Look at that. Of course, the CGI series. I grew up with the CGI series, so I like these ones a lot more than if they were based on the model series. First up, we have Thomas, a pretty simple model that has had a hell of a journey throughout my years as a model train guy. First off, his right buffer, that one, actually broke off the very first day I got him. If you watch some of the older on the DLMs, you can see that, but eventually I did manage to glue it back on. That's the only physical damage he sustained, but this guy's been through quite a bit besides that. He's been in a lot of videos, and he's honestly my most fun model to run, just because he's Thomas, and I can make fun stories up with him and the other Thomas characters. But really not too much to say about him, he's just Thomas. On to Percy. Percy here is not only an amazing replication of the CGI model, but is also the smallest model in my entire collection. This guy's tiny. He can barely pull anything as a result, but he's not really supposed to. I mean, in the CGI show, the trains only get to like a maximum length of like 10 cars, so it's fine. Not to mention the Bachmann-Thomas rolling stock is super light. This guy does have a pretty infamous trait in the model train community, and that was the fact that he was the first N-scale 040 ever that was actually reliable. And because of that, most Bachmann Percys sold were just so their chassis could be kit bashed into other engines. I'm one of the few people who actually owns an original condition Bachmann Percy with no modifications. He's a fine runner, he's a fine model, his details are nice, but again, just like Thomas, he's a pretty basic model that I don't have too much to say about.
This guy was purchased at Jerry's Trains in Mishawaka, just like Silva, and he's just a really nice guy, even if I did have to pay $100 for him, which is quite overpriced. And next up, we have my favorite Thomas character that's been produced in N-Scale, James! Dun 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 dun. Just like the other models, he is a literally perfect recreation of the CGI model. Except he's not. There is one very tiny problem with this guy, and it's the wheels. They're unpainted. They should be painted black. And the other problem with him is this weird divot thing he has in his front running board. I don't know what that is. But either way, James is a pretty nice model. He actually uses the same chassis as Thomas, so that's pretty cool. And because of that, they run at the exact same speed. Actually, so do all the Bachmann-Thomas engines, so it's really fun to run these guys together. James is the slightly quickest of the Bachmann-Thomas engines, just a little bit faster than Percy, and he's a pretty fun one to run, just because he's James. The one downside I have to say with this thing is that the lining smudges really easily. On the side of the cab, you can see various parts of the lining that have smudged off just because the finger oils on your hands will rub them off. Not very well applied, especially for a model that's going to be used by kids, probably, and is going to be manhandled a lot. I wish they fixed that, and I'm probably going to have to fix the lining on my version of James eventually, or just get a new one. But yeah, I will definitely be buying the new Origins James when it comes out later this year, but just like the other Bachmann-Thomas models, and a lot of the models in my collection, he's just one I don't have too much to say about. And next up, we have the Bachmann N-Scale Toby, which I honestly think is the most accurate model to its source material in the entire collection. This guy is literally perfect. Every detail is replicated amazingly. Yeah, the bell is a part of the body tooling, but besides that, I have literally zero complaints with this guy. He is perfect. The livery application is perfect. The number is printed perfectly. His tail lamp is filled in, the top strings are nice, his funnel is a separately inserted piece, and just look at that face. Genuinely the best face on a Bachmann N-Scale Thomas engine. Look at it. It literally is Toby in N-Scale form. It's perfect. And the best feature of this entire model is without a doubt the chassis. Because if I pick him up, you can see that not only does he actually have 6 wheels, he has side rods. Why? You're never gonna see them. But the fact they bothered to add them just because they were there on the original basis is so admirable. If they had made his wheels red to match the Marklin engine chassis that he used in the actual show, that would be cool. But this is supposed to be a replication of the CGI model, so I'm perfectly okay with the fact he doesn't have that. He is literally perfect. No complaints. And now we've exited the realm of actually functioning models. The rest of the models in the collection from this point on are engines that don't work, are dummies, or were never designed to run in the first place. These engines just sit on the DLM because it's supposed to be a museum. They're, in canon, static displays. And I'm sure you've seen them in the background of a lot of the On the DLM episodes. Either way, we'll start with Maya, a Pennsylvania Railroad F unit that's in very rough shape. The canon is that she's like unrestored, waiting for restoration at the DLM, like a lot of engines are at museums. Numbered 510, she's just there. Being a non-running model, she's the least interesting of all of the F units in my collection. The interesting part, though, is that she's technically a dummy, like a dummy unit. So when I connect her up to an engine with compatible couplings, usually Levi, they can run together perfectly fine, and Maya can even lead trains at high speeds because she's a dummy unit. It doesn't really look normal or like it should work, and I'm actually planning to give Maya a complete repaint out of Pennsy livery and into Penn Central Black because I like Penn Central Black and it's an easy livery to do. Not to mention 510 actually wore it in its operational career. That will happen eventually. But just like a lot of the other model restorations, I haven't started on it yet. Eventually, she will become a fully working dummy unit on the DLM, and in canon, she will be restored and fully operational. But that day is not dead today, like a lot of the other models. My here also comes from Jerry's Trains and was an extreme bargain buy that I got with 3 Pennsylvania heavyweight coaches. Nice. But yeah, again, not too much to say about her since she doesn't run. Next up, we have Hank and Jerome, which are 2 Southern Pacific Scarlet and Gray speed lettering GP40-2s. These 2 are also dummy units and seem to be the most ubiquitous N-scale models out there. Every time I go to Essen House, every time I go to a train show, every time I find one of these somewhere. I'm wondering if they were just like given out as free gifts at stores or something, considering how basic they are, and not to mention the fact that I didn't even buy these engines. They were given to me by a friend who knew I liked trains. These 2 were actually the very first N-scale models I ever got, because they were given to me back when I was still in the HO era. And way later when I switched over to N, I was like, wait a minute, I have 2 N SD40s that I can just put on the DLM as display engines. And I did. I would say they weren't designed to be dummy units, but they clearly were, because if you flip them over, you can see they have rotating bogies and couplings. But the problem is the couplings don't move. They're just metal molded into the chassis, and the bogies don't rotate nearly enough to go around any radius curve. So I'm genuinely wondering if these were like birthday cake toppers or something cheap, like that. Who knows, but they look good as background dressing on the DLM, and that's all I really asked for from them. Next up, we have a completely static display model. It might be N-scale, but it was never designed to run. In fact, it was never designed to go out of its display case. I unscrewed the base keeper plate on the display case and ripped this guy out so I could use him as background dressing on the DLM. He's obviously an Amtrak F40 number 375, and his name is Norman. In canon, he was supposed to be like a cabbage car, and I could use him with Benny and Hornet, but he doesn't work on actual track. The one and only caveat to him working are these stupid step ladders. They stop his bogies from turning all the way. He's the closest to entering a fully functional state out of the non-functioning models, and one of these days I will convert him into a full cabbage car with cabbage doors on the side, and I will renumber him to the 90221 series. But again, I don't really have the skills to repaint models at the moment, and right now I'm just really focused on getting him running again. But for now, he's just a display model. And next up, we have honestly the saddest model in the whole collection. Trumpet. Weird name, I know, but he's Norfolk Southern Ace, number 1001. I bet you're wondering, why in the world is this thing not running? I mean, it's the same model as Lewis and Lucy. It should work, but it doesn't. Because it's a DCC fitted. I bought this model from Walmart.com of all places, and they did not label it correctly that it was DCC fitted. In fact, some of the other models in my collection are DCC fitted, like George, but I don't have DCC systems to run them. However, for some stupid, inexplicable reason, Trumpet just won't work on DC. And I think it's because he has a Digitrax decoder, which blocks all DC signals to avoid damaging the decoder, so that's why. But because of that, he literally does not work. I will fix him one day. Literally all I have to do is open him up and yank the decoder out. But I'm scared. So I don't want to do it. And with that, on to the final model in the collection, which isn't even a model. And now we have the very last engine in the collection. Yeah, not model, because as you probably could tell by the poor quality and giant nasty couplings on this thing, it's not even a model. In fact, it's an ornament. Yes, really. Hence the hook on the top. This is a Lionel Great Northern EP5 ornament. But when I got it, it turned out to be exactly N-scale. I wasn't expecting this guy to be on the DLM at all, or even in the lore. But nope, he is literally N-scale. Perfectly. And so I figured, in the other 11 months of the year when he's not on my Christmas tree, why not just put him on the DLM as decoration? And so I did. Just like all the other static models, he just sits there, but I have no plans of converting this guy into an actually functioning model because, well, I can't. He was never supposed to be and never will be. And with that, we've reached the end of the first Fallen Flag collection, my N-Scale Fleet. I know this video was kinda lazy with the voiceover, I know, and the editing. I know it was pretty lazy and bad and generally not up to my standards, but it's a model collection. This video is already ridiculously long, and I don't even want to think about how long it would be or how long it would take to make if I, put stuff on screen, wrote a script, oh geez, and didn't just, improv everything. That's why I keep saying like and and stuttering all the time in this video, because it's completely unscripted. Most of the times when I do that, like all my narration in my Railfan videos is improv, for example, I just delete it when I mess up. But this time I can't, because there's a spinning thing. And the few times I did, which I'm sure you saw, it was weird because it jump cut later when the engine was in a different position. So that's why I didn't. I know this video kind of came off as low effort, but it's not really supposed to get a lot of views or do well or anything. It's pretty much only here just so I can show off my N-Scale Fleet in a video. There will be more Fallen Flag collections, and if you've watched this far, I hope you're looking forward to them. But with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Catch those units while you can, especially the N-Scale models, and I will see you in the next video.